Hey everybody, John the Other here, obviously, and you have certainly heard by now about Wilfrid Laurier University and their little star chamber that got secretly recorded by a teaching assistant who was hauled on the carpet for presenting a televised debate which included Jordan Peterson, and censured for failing to immediately condemn Jordan Peterson because he's a very, very bad man. Well, I have the recording here. We're going to play the recording and comment on it.
And why that might have been seen as problematic by some of the students, maybe even threatening?
I don't see how someone would rationally think it was threatening. I could see how it might challenge their existing ideas, but for me, that's the spirit of the university, is challenging ideas that you already have.
One of the issues at stake here is whether or not the teaching, the conceptual space of the university, you know, the lecture hall and the university campus itself, is a safe space. Now, we don't mean safe in the sense of safe from marauding bands of ninjas or, you know, charging rhinoceros. They mean safe ideologically, that your conceptions, your ideas are not to be challenged. In the social justice framework, the university is supposed to be a safe space. Now, Lindsay Shepherd, the teaching assistant at Laurier, who's getting hauled on the carpet here, although she's left-leaning, she quite rightly points out that the university should not be a safe space. In fact, if you want to indebt yourself, go thousands and thousands of dollars into debt, why would you do that when you're just going to be ideologically coddled and told that everything that you arrived at the university with in your head is going to remain exactly as it is? Universities are horrendously ill-serving their students if they don't produce an environment that is intellectually unsafe.
And I don't know who this came from. I would be interested to see the original complaint or complaints, because I don't really have any context as to what exactly their problem was.
Now, Lindsay Shepherd is hauled into this meeting and, you know, disciplined and subject to an interrogation based on a complaint made by an unknown number of her students, and the text of the complaint is not to be disclosed to Lindsay. So she knows there's been a complaint made, or maybe more than one, but probably one, otherwise the answer would have been different. But she doesn't know what the specific complaint is, so she's being required to answer a charge that she doesn't in fact know what the charge is. It's like being shouted at to confess to a crime that you don't know what the crime is. I'm sure if anybody's seen Game of Thrones, they remember a scene something like that. This is a psychological torture technique that I'm not going to say these administrators interrogating her are conscious that they're using a psychological torture technique, but they are.
Confess. Confess. Confess.
So the thing is about this is, if you're presenting something like this, you have to think about the kind of teaching climate that you're creating.
So Lindsay Shepherd is being told to think about the environment that she's creating by showing a clip from Ontario TV that was broadcast on a show called, I think, The Agenda, while she's being interrogated by 3 people, and she breaks down crying during this interrogation. And apparently she's the one creating a hostile or a toxic environment. I mean, this comedy writes itself.
And this is actually, these arguments are counter to the Canadian Human Rights Code.
The thing that just gets pointed out here is that the Ontario Human Rights Code and Bill C-16 is in contradiction, in opposition to established biological science and established psychological research. So Canada is now enacting laws that contradict current best-known science. Well, to me, this is like, okay, we got to throw out the science or we got to throw out the law. The answer seems to be fairly obvious. When your laws contradict your best and most current scientific understanding of the world, you throw the law out because it's garbage.
Bringing something like that up in class, not critically, and I understand that you're trying to like...
It was critical. I introduced it critically.
How so? Like
I said, it was in the spirit of debate.
Okay, in the spirit of the debate is slightly different than being like, okay, this is like a problematic idea that we maybe want to unpack.
So the argument being made by the interrogator is that Lindsay Shepherd, although she introduced the debate neutrally as a matter for class discussion in her lecture or presentation, she failed to offer it as problematic. Here's a problematic view that we have to hammer. Well, a professor of psychology, who, I'm not in the field of psychology, but I tend to think that Jordan Peterson is kind of up near the top of his field. His views contradict political orthodoxy. Therefore, at a university, at an institute of higher learning, he is to be marginalized and silenced and made into a pariah. Well, you don't really have a university anymore once you do that. What you have is an Orthodox church. You have a cult whose ideas are not subject to review based on data. And if you're a parent paying for a kid to go to school, are you paying for your child to go to the seminary, or are you paying for them to get education? You know. Now I'm skipping forward a little bit. I'm going to just play a segment where a woman whose name I don't know, but she's one of the interrogators, jumps in and invokes the Ontario Human Rights Commission and Bill C-16 and accuses Lindsay Shepherd of targeting transgender students for violence. The logic is very hard to follow. I'm going to play her whole clip, and I'm going to put her text on screen so you can see how incoherent it is. And the reason I'm doing this is not to make fun of the interrogator, although that's a side effect that everybody's going to enjoy, but the ideologically poisoned minds. And these administrators and interrogators are ideologically poisoned. They've had their brains scrambled by ideology. And I'm laying out what she's saying in text on the screen. And remember, she's the interrogator. She's in a position of power. She has the comfort position. And look at and listen to how incoherent it is what she's saying. It's a big, jumbled mess of...
So under that, gendered violence doesn't just include sexual violence, but it also includes targeting folks based on gender. So that includes transphobia, biphobia, homophobia. All those sorts of things are protected under the policy, and so those are things that Laurier has upheld as values, as well as the Ontario Human Rights Code. And so those are things that we're responsible for not impacting our students in that way, and not spreading transphobia in that way.
So I don't know about anybody else, but I think living and working in a policy or under a law in which accidentally getting the wrong pronoun for somebody who's made up some arbitrary silly pronoun, and if I accidentally fall into my old habits of speech and call them he because I think it's a he, or she because I think it's a she, and I get it wrong, I'm guilty of a hate crime. That's going to make me afraid to have social interactions with anybody who is transsexual. So this policy is going to make me, and everybody else with any sense of self-preservation, transphobic. Now, I'm skipping forward a bit because the interrogator goes over a bunch of stuff that's totally irrelevant, like the campus is apparently being postered with white supremacist posters, which has nothing whatsoever to do with this teaching assistant, and apparently there's an ongoing political discussion in the wider world outside the campus about whether there should be a white nationalist state, also completely not relevant to this discussion, and we could drag in the additional conversation that's been happening from feminist circles about whether men should be exterminated from the face of the earth, also not relevant. I mean, the world is full of difficult and controversial political opinions, And I guess that they exist means something, that this teaching assistant, Lindsay Shepard, is guilty of wrongthink or something. Anyway, I'm skipping past all that. What the interrogator says next is that Jordan Peterson is guilty of a number of crimes.
He's out there.
He is a real person, but he is a real person who has engaged in targeted behavior that, or targeting of trans students.
Targeted behavior and or targeting of trans students. What does that mean?
In a particular, like basically doxing them.
No.
If you know the term, like giving out their personal information.
No.
So that they will be attacked.
False.
Harassed.
It's a stupid lie.
So that death threats.
It's just stupid.
Will find them.
You know, it's really tedious, but even if Jordan Peterson had done all these things, which he didn't, but like, let's assume he did, what possible impact does that have on the debate that was on Ontario television that she presented with an opposing point of view for discussion in the class? Assuming that she even knew about all these non-existent things that Jordan Peterson has purported to have done that he in fact didn't. Like, it's nonsense. That if any of this had actually happened, it would actually have no impact at all on her showing this video, this debate.
This is something that he has done to his own students. He has done to other students. And this is also something that the students are aware of.
Social justice warriors always lie. But buckle up for Godwin's Law, because here it comes.
So this is basically like playing, not to kind of do the thing where everything is kind of compared to Hitler, but this is like neutrally playing a speech by Hitler or Milo Yiannopoulos.
I always forget that they include Milo, but let's just first deal with Peterson. It's fantastically absurd. In fact, it's really quite foul and disgusting and despicable to compare Peterson to Hitler. For anybody who knows anything about Peterson, just watching his videos, one of the things that drives him is a need to understand the catastrophes of the 20th century which emerged from Marxism and communism, totaling about 100 million murders between the Soviet Republic, the Red Party in China, the Korean People's Republic of Korea, the killing fields in Cambodia, the South American dictators, all these socialist Marxist regimes, which together, between them, added up to about 100 million murders. By contrast, the Nazis killed 16 million, but apparently they're the bad ones. Oh, and by the way, any social justice warrior who points at somebody who is to the right of center, or even just to the right of them, and says you're a Nazi, you're fantastically stupid. The actual name of the German Nazi Party of 1933 was the German National Socialist Workers' Party. But let's move along to Milo. So Peterson and Milo are being compared to Hitler. Well, let's look at Milo. Milo is a blonde, highly effeminate, flamboyant, Catholic, Jewish, gay boy who likes sucking black cock. And that's his own description of himself. That's not me insulting him. So, which one of these guys has put a bunch of Jews on trains and sent them to an internment camp or a labor camp or a death camp? Oh, yeah, that's right. Neither one. But apparently the heroes of the social justice movement, all those communist leaders, they have a little bit of blood on their hands. And you want to bring back communism. I mean, it's really, it's incomprehensible. But before I get too much into a rant, there's a lot of people piling on Laurier University and saying this is the root of evil or this is the source of the problem. And it's really not. Laurier University is not special. This is not a special case. This is not an extraordinary case. The only thing that's special and extraordinary is that this one got recorded. This exact star chamber, this exact tow-headed, ding-batted, ignorant of history ideology is playing out in universities in every city in North America and probably in Europe too. This cult thinking, this upside-down, backwards thinking where we idealize the greatest murder ideology in history and pretend that anybody to the right of the SJW is a Nazi when it's in fact a socialist ideology. This is happening in every major university. I think the universities, they have got to be allowed to burn themselves to the ground, and we're going to have a new way for people to get educated, because they're certainly not getting educated with this cult being poured into their soft little heads. Anyway, thanks for listening to me rant, and thanks for watching the video, and as always, have a lovely, lovely day.